faculty are supposed to have control over the what and how of scholarship and teaching. What I encourage you to do is go look at the AAUP AFT's statement on academic freedom. And one of the lines that you will see in there, one of the phrases you'll see is respect for the opinions of others. And I think that's the place where these things are challenged. Because sometimes I'll get this from other people, not my department, of course, but other universities or other departments on campus where you can't tell me that, you can't give me that because you're violating academic freedom. And we go, oh, no, we're not. This is how it impacted, this is how it created disrespect. Can you talk about it in a way differently than that does not end up having that impact? So we have to, if you want to work with this in an academic environment, you need to be and think clearly through for yourself and in conversations with your colleagues, what do we mean by academic freedom? What is academic freedom and what is not? It's the same issue around free speech, too. Tenure. Tenure provides the opportunity, it provides us with economic security, stability, connection to the institution, being able to establish some of those really critical and controversial types of research that we do. But it also provides the opportunity for persistent aggression. It restricts mobility. I mean, if you're already tenured at one institution, it's just not going to be a guarantee that if you go somewhere else, you'll get tenured there. So it can restrict people. That's interesting because some of the strategies people use about getting out of these situations is moving. So lateral transfers are out of the organizations. Academics, in fact, because of the nature of their work and tenure, could end up being trapped. And others join in. Longer relationships, we know from the workplace bullying and aggression literature, more likely other people get sucked into the process. So it becomes more of a mobbing experience. What are the values in academia? Autonomy. Speaking to that. That's one of the things that attracts us, faculty, to the academy, is autonomy, the independence of thought and action. We get to decide what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Now, we often interpret that to mean nobody can tell me what to do. Yeah, there's some of that. It can be used by an actor to say, I don't have to take any of your commentary. I don't have to consider it. I don't have to. So you want to talk about my behavior? No, 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 no. I get to control and do what I want, how I want, and when I want it. Now, this is the one I'm fascinated with, is collegiality. That is a value that we have. It shows up in our policy statements. It shows up in the AAUP, AFT statements. It shows up all over the place. What I've learned, or am learning, is that people have different ideas about what collegiality means. So my own interpretation is that it's about caring and respect for colleagues, for people within the institution. Other ways it's been interpreted is non-interference. It is, and I have had people say this to me. I remember there's a really wonderful book called The College Administrator Survival Guide by C.K. Gonzalez, G-U-N-S-A-L-E-S, and she was at the University of Illinois. She was an associate provost, I think.
She was a legal counsel.
Yeah, she was legal counsel.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's written some really cool stuff, and I absolutely love it. And she would work with chairs around, and other people in the institution around dealing with particularly difficult faculty or colleagues. And she describes a case in which she talked to a chair and said, okay, so these are the ways you can approach the person, this is how you can talk about it. And the chair looks at her and says, I can't do that. And she says, why can't you do that? Because it's not collegial for me to give them feedback on their behavior. And she's looking at him going, they're screwing up right, left, and center. They're creating a hostile work environment, and it's not collegial for you to do this informally and go to them and talk to them and say something to them about it. 3 days later, after I read that, I was talking to another person on the campus, and we were talking about a very specific situation with a colleague. And I had asked her a question. I said, I've heard this rumor, because my big belief is you check rooms out. So is there any substance? So the person said, well, there's kind of this and that. I said, wow, it sounds like we might have a colleague in trouble. So has anybody talked to this person? And guess what the person said to me?
It's not collegial.
It would not be collegial to do that. And I looked at the person and I said, you've just identified things that suggest to me that we have a colleague who is struggling and we're going to say nothing? That's not collegial? So depending on how it gets interpreted, caring and respect, we might be able to do that within that context. But if we interpret it or it gets connect it into autonomy, we interpret it in such a way that says we do not have any legitimacy to take any action. I cannot talk to a colleague about this because it's not legitimate. I don't have the legitimate authority to do it. So what they'll do is give it to the chair, and then the chair goes, I don't have any authority to do it either. So the other part about academia is that conformity and authority are contraindicated, right? That's all tied into autonomy, all tied into academic freedom. So how do you manage this stuff? How can you manage it when it's also a decentralized place? So you have all these individuals, right, doing their own thing, thinking they can do whatever they want. The reality is that when you look at people, departments and academic units require that people pull together. So yes, we have individual actors, but in order for them and everybody else to do what they need to do and to have the context they have to have, they all need to pull together. Right? That's what committee work is about. That's what all of that stuff, reviewing and everything is about. So while an individual faculty may think they're completely autonomous, they are not. They're really not autonomous. So here's the dilemma. Collegiality and autonomy are critical for academic freedom and the work of the academic, yet these norms are interpreted as preventing action to address what faculty view as problematic behaviors, which if it's not addressed, what do you think happens? It goes on and on, people feel upset and annoyed by that, they may be engaging in some lovely self-fulfilling prophecy, and we start to see examples of environments that become hostile. We could all probably think of a department environment in our experience that we would consider dysfunctional and hostile. So that's our dilemma. This is where I think we have a chance. Oh, shoot. Let me go quickly. This is where I think we have a chance, and it's the power of the colleagues to do this. Colleagues are important. They see things happen. They know things, right? And what we know from the literature, I'm just going to go through this quickly because I want to get to this really cool part. What we know from the literature, I'm working generally speaking, is coworkers can have a profound influence on the quality of our experience. Remember, high-quality connections, corrosive connections. We know that coworkers are present often when this stuff happens. We have seen very creative responding on the part of coworkers to protect people. You know, the secretary who you go in and you say, how is so-and-so today? And they go, how is the provost today? Right? And they say, I don't think you want to talk to him today. Right? So we're managing that. Or he's in a really great mood. Go ahead and go in and talk to him. He's in a good space. Some of that, and I'll talk cold white, cold pink with anybody afterwards. It's a nursing response. And then the whole notion about changing conversations. So why peer action? Most of our efforts tend to focus on the target and the actor. And part of what we're doing is saying it's exclusively a problem between the two of you. But hopefully the idea that you're getting is it's not exclusively their problem. It's affecting everybody in the unit. If we focus at policies and procedures, that's a fairly high level, but does it filter down? And who's involved in setting up these policies and procedures anyway? Let the chair handle it. Let the provost handle it. What we know is that that's limited because, first of all, they have to figure out how bad is it. And HR goes crazy on this one. Don't tell me I have to wait 6 months to intervene, because that's one of the research definitions. What do you do when the behavior is in public? It's not the obvious yelling, screaming, the other things we typically associate with this. And how do you motivate witnesses? How do you get your observers to tell you what they saw and what's going on? It's important to de-escalate early on. That's what I'm really clear as a DR person. I've heard people say, we mediate these kinds of hostile bullying situations. I say, oh no, we don't. We don't. We would want to get involved much earlier on, but if there's been a lot of damage done, I won't mediate a situation like this because the target can't be at the table because they're disabled.
What do you do then?
Well, that's where you and I can have a great conversation about this. One of it is literally separating the parties. You have to get them separated and out. You have to pull the person out somehow, some way, and then start working other kinds of strategies. You can see how it starts to get really complicated. That's why you want to do it early on. And that's why colleagues are so important, because they see the stuff starting to happen, and they have the greatest potential. Work environment is cooperative and civil. Again, we look at our policies and procedures. We're a collegial community of scholars. Look at our policies, see what that says. And the notion of a community response is everybody's issue.